Hello. Welcome, everyone. If you are here for the 2023 Environmental and Reproductive Health Film and Webinar Series, you are in the right place. I'm not going to wait too long here, but we will give it a minute or so for folks to trickle into the room, and then we will start soon. So thank you for your patience. If you have any tech issues, please privately chat with our tech support, who has the Center for Biological Diversity frog in the Zoom box. So I'm going to give it a second here while folks come in and move my Zoom boxes around. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's discussion. Before we get started here, I'm going to go over a little bit of housekeeping. So everyone is muted as we have a really large group today. And thankfully, this event will be recorded, and we're going to email you a copy of the event recording when it's over, probably early next week. Information about continuing ed units or credits, I'm not sure if anybody on will be wanting those, will be shared in the follow-up email. So if you want to submit that to a credentialing body, you'll be able to. And I'm going to start us off with a quick introduction before moderating our discussion with our three wonderful panelists. And we are going to make sure that we leave time for open Q&A from the audience. So you can do that whenever you want. You can add Q&A into the Q&A section throughout the discussion. So happy to take those questions near the end. All right. So my name is Kelly Dennings, and my pronouns are she and her. For those that are unable to see me today, I'm a short, white, middle-aged woman with brown hair standing in my office. I want to acknowledge that I'm on stolen Seminole, Timucua, and Muskogee land where many individuals face displacement and suffering, and hope one day they receive restorative measures. I've spent 15 years working in waste, forestry, and conservation before getting a master's in public health. And I'm a campaigner with the Center for Biological Diversity, working to develop and execute campaigns that address the connections between reproductive health, gender equity, endless growth, which is our topic today, and climate and extinction crises. So just a little bit about me. So before we start today's webinar, I'm going to ask Fabiola to open our first poll. So we'd like to get a feel for folks who are on the call today. So would you say, whether this is work or volunteer or just your personal interest, that your environmental health and justice, are you more on the climate change side, maybe public health and nursing, reproductive health and justice, alternative economies, waste, other, or not applicable? So we'll give it a minute here, and I think you can check multiple ones. So if you, I always work at this intersection of things, and when somebody asks me to like pick one, it's so frustrating. So you should be able to have multiple choice here. So we'll give it another second. All right. Environmental health and justice, climate change, leading the pack here. I'm thinking most of you can see these results too, so I won't read them all out. All right. Well, thanks for giving us that feedback. It looks like we've got some interested folks here that are really going to learn about alternative economies and other methods of working to have a wonderful economy for the future. So just a quick introduction about the center. We're a national nonprofit conservation organization that works through a combination of science, the law, activism, and creative media to protect wildlife and the wild places they need to thrive. So on the screen, you're seeing all of our different programs. I want to set the stage briefly. So environmental health refers to environmental factors and toxicants that create poor health outcomes for humans. And this would include, chemicals, pollution, and climate change. And then reproductive justice, as defined by Sister Song, is the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. Unfortunately, threats to environmental health are putting reproductive justice at risk. So what does this have to do with our current economic system? Our capitalist society is impacting reproductive health in many ways, be that through air, soil, and water pollution, climate change and extreme weather events, and manufacturing of products with endocrine disrupting chemicals. So you can read all about this work in our report that we put out last year titled The Influence of Environmental Toxicity, Inequity and Capitalism on Reproductive Health. And I believe Malia is putting that in the chat now. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Malia. So we would love for you to take the time to read that report if you haven't. But just a few things about this that I want to note. So our discussion today aims to provide a brief introductory overview of the relationship between the environment, racial inequity, reproductive justice, and their connection to capitalism. It does not intend, nor is it able to cover the full range of issues relevant to these complex subjects. And for us, capitalism refers to market capitalist systems predicated on models of infinite growth. So while the discussion of capitalism will frequently reference racist, sexist, and classist outcomes that perpetuate reproductive injustices, it's not our intention to collapse racism, sexism, or classism into capitalism. These are interconnected topics and oppressions that are all related, making it difficult to pinpoint just one problematic system. So as we continue to do research, the issue of market capitalism continues to be identified as one of the oppressive systems harming people and the planet. I've shared this story before where I was doing research and it kind of just kept coming up over the last few years when I would say, oh, what's the issue? And folks would say capitalism. And I would say to my boss, well, people are telling us we need to work on capitalism. And she was like, what does that mean? What does that look like? And so we really took the time to figure out what would that look like as part of our work. So as we continue to do research, folks find it difficult to see beyond this system that is so ingrained in our lives, and we really want to change that. And Adoma's here with us today to talk about her recent center report, where she conducted a US survey with the general public to get a sense of their existing knowledge of alternative economy principles, their perceptions of the role corporations play in the economy, and their willingness to engage in community-level alternative economy actions. And this is a graph on the screen from her recent report. So the goal of the film and webinar series is to continue the learning that came out of last year's report and to motivate folks to be change agents. So today we won't dive deep into the particulars of each of the topics associated with reproductive harm, but we'll take a look at some of the economic solutions that could help not only people, but the planet. But hopefully you'll join us for the rest of our fall film and webinar series, where we're going to dive deep into the topics of industrial agriculture, plastic products and climate change through the lens of this extractive endless growth economy. So if you're not signed up, Malia is putting in the chat a link to the remaining events. And on the screen, you can see what we're going to talk about next week. We're watching the movie Children of the Vine, and we're going to have a panel discussion about the harm from industrial agriculture. So, okay, that was my intro. We're going to have two more polls here, actually. So the first poll, I'm going to have Fabiola start here. If you want these continuing ed credits and you want a certificate showing that you attended, go ahead and say yes. So we'll give this a few seconds for folks. I give you a little bit of time to, if you're running late and you want continuing ed credits. So that's why I put the poll here. But Fabiola, I think you can stop that poll now and no need to share it. And then our final poll really is for us to start kind of working with you to think about some of these activities. So which of these activities have you done before? Have you banked at a credit union, shopped at a food co-op, supported mutual aid, used community-supported agriculture, ridden a bike or scooter that is shared by others? God knows they're dangerous in some communities, and then repaired something at a local makerspace. Would love to have one of those in my town, or participated in unpaid care work. So again, this should be multiple choice. You should be able to check all that apply. We'll give it another second here to see what folks are thinking. All right. Let's go ahead and see what the results are. Oh, okay. Yeah. This is great. So 60% credit union, 83% food co-op, 20% mutual aid. So glad Alison is on with us today to talk about mutual aid. Community supported agriculture, 57%. And then up here, participated in unpaid care work, 63%. All right, well, hopefully that gets you all thinking as we move into our discussion today. So last year's report recommended all sorts of solutions, from increased corporate transparency, healthcare for all, better testing of chemicals, access to safer products, and a just transition. So the solution of a just transition might normally be associated with the energy sector, but we need multiple industry-specific transitions, along with a full economic transition to something that embodies values such as solidarity and cooperation, equity in all dimensions, social and economic democracy, sustainability, and pluralism. So with today's film and discussion, A Silent Transformation, we're starting with one of the solutions. The cooperative movement was built by people who took on the responsibility of their collective well-being in the face of government neglect, economic exclusion, and cultural discrimination. As the modern economy increasingly denies vast sectors of the population basic amenities for a decent life, this cooperative spirit is as critical as ever. However, over the years, the co-op sector has become insular and poorly insulated. So the movie, A Silent Transformation, sets out to explore the innovative self-help efforts of different communities across the province of Ontario. And by addressing their needs collectively, they're helping to regain the radical vision of cooperation. So for those of you that didn't get a chance to watch the movie yet, that is a short summary of it. And I will say, for those that didn't get to watch it, it is going to be open one extra day. So Malia, I think, is putting that in there in the chat, but it will be open until midnight Pacific time on Friday. So, but we're glad to have you on, and hopefully you did get a chance to watch the film. All right. So let me introduce my panelists for today, and then I'm going to stop screen sharing and we're going to get into this discussion. So Emily Kawano is a founder and co-coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network. She's co-director of the Wellspring Cooperative, which is developing a network of worker cooperatives and solidarity economy initiatives in Springfield, Massachusetts. Previously, she was the director of the Center for Popular Economics. Adoma Addo was up until recently an associate at the Center for Biological Diversity. She recently just changed jobs a couple weeks ago, so we're glad to have her back. But she was supporting research and campaigns on waste prevention, sexual and reproductive health and rights, and systemic injustices associated with unequal burdens and unequal access to health services. And then Alison Dreith, I should have asked you how to pronounce it. Dreith, okay, is the director of strategic partnerships at Midwest Access Coalition and does quality assurance for Women's Health Specialists of California. She has over 14 years of experience in abortion movement work and currently serves on the membership committee at Abortion Care Network. And in 2017, she was named one of the 50 political pros you need to know by the Missouri Times. So thank you all so much for being with us. Yes, that's the end. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and we will start the conversation. So hopefully everyone is feeling good about this. So as I said, the film went deep on one alternative economy example, which was co-ops. And it talked about the model from the producer, worker, consumer, and multi-stakeholder lens. And it also talked about our need to work towards a triple bottom line, the social well-being, environmental health, and just economy. So this question is for anybody. You know, I'm curious as to your reaction to the film and potentially what questions it raised for you. Anybody want to jump in?
I think it was great. I'm a little jaded, right? I've been in the co-op world for a long time and watched plenty of documentaries and heard lots of talks. And I was a little jaded thinking, you know, what am I going to learn that's new? But what I really liked about it is, as compared to a lot of other documentaries that I've watched about co-ops that really highlight the co-op itself and that experience and why they're great, which I support. It's, you know, they're challenging, but great. This one really put co-ops in the context of these larger challenges, whether it's, you know, housing or it's jobs. I really liked the segment on the town of, I believe it was London, and how many co-ops are popping up, like a deindustrialized town, and how co-ops are really popping up and helping to revitalize that community. So I applaud it for putting co-ops, really not only celebrating co-ops, but celebrating co-ops in the context of what they can do for these different communities across a wide variation of environments. So that was great and impressive.
I also similarly liked it because of the area of London, Ontario, and talking about the delaboralization of the community. It really resonated with me and where I was born and raised. I was a co-op member in college because I went to university in a small hippie town where one would think that you could find a co-op, and lo and behold, in the middle of nowhere, they had one. But then thinking about coming home, and I moved back to my home area during the pandemic for a lot of the reasons we're discussing in this movie series. And thinking how much the co-op movement could really help to revitalize my community that's getting some new investment for the first time in probably 50 years. And so I'm really excited to take maybe this film and some of its points back to some of my small town local leaders in an area on the Mississippi River where factory after factory has just left our communities sick with cancer because they haven't cleaned up after they've fled our communities and taken away our jobs. And so there's a lot here to example moving forward, I think.
Yeah, I certainly want to echo a lot of what has already been said. I really love how this film really takes a positive and solution-oriented view on a lot of these larger pressing issues of our that are kind of inherent to our economic system. It has a very like radical undercurrent to it that I really love. It challenges this kind of capitalist realism that assumes that capitalism is like the only option that there is for people. And it really demonstrates that people are involved in solidarity economy activities, alternative economy activities. Like people are involved in investing in these systems, and they really represent staples of resilient communities. Yeah, I really love that narrative, and I think that's a crucial part of that discussion, of this larger discussion of the larger movement, maintaining that optimism in the face of, uncertainty.
Can I add one more thing?
Please.
I also like the historical perspective. I did not know that there was the CCP, the Canadian Cooperative something party, maybe, that turned into the NDP. Like that was an eye-opener to me. But anyway, it does give you a sense that co-ops have been with us for a long time. And so you get that flavor, which is good. Like it's not like we're creating something new. It had long history. And also it did talk about the roots with labor as well, right? Or am I thinking of something else? Anyway, good historical perspective.
Yeah, well, thank you all. I was really pleased when I found the film, because I think I did want it to kind of have that like optimism and solutions, and it's doable, and folks, how do we scale and all that kind of stuff. So cool. Well, I'm going to start with you, Emily. So you're the coordinator of the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network, and the film focused on co-ops, but there is so much more to the solidarity economy than just co-ops. So can you give our audience a high-level overview of the solidarity economy and its main tenets and the work that you do there?
Sure. Yeah, so let me define it first. The solidarity economy is a number of things. First, it's a framework, and it's a framework that provides some skeletal bones through which to connect solidarity economy practices. So these are practices, and I'll give you examples in a second. These are practices that align with solidarity economy values. So very much the values are sort of the foundation of this framework. So the values will look different in different parts of the world, but the US Solidarity Economy Network uses the 5. Kelly has mentioned them already. So solidarity, participatory democracy, equity in all dimensions, race, class, gender, etc., sustainability, and the last one is pluralism, which means that it's not a one-size-fits-all model. There are many paths that will get us to this more just, sustainable, democratic world. And it's not a blueprint. So that's solidarity economy. I'll just mention that the Solidarity Economy Network emerged in 2007 at the US Social Forum in Atlanta. And before that time, solidarity economy was pretty much really an unheard of term. It was fairly strong in Latin America and had a fair amount of legs in Europe as well as Canada, but here it was unknown. And I would say now, 17 years later, solidarity economy is pretty well known in progressive circles and on the left and in social movements. And I think that while we've done a lot, that growth and raising awareness and making some of those connections has been pretty organic. Now is a moment where we really do need to think much more strategically about how to scale up, scale out, and make those connections, because there's a huge foundation upon which to build. They tend to be unconnected and therefore invisible. So some of them you've already mentioned. So in addition to the things that were in the quiz and that you've mentioned, things like, what did you mention? Public banking, you mentioned participatory budgeting, community land trusts. I'm not sure that you mentioned that. Co-housing, all kinds of cooperatives, not only worker cooperatives, but consumer and producer cooperatives, and then multi-stakeholder cooperatives. A lot of kind of DIY stuff. And I think it's important to recognize that one question about, have you ever engaged in any kind of unpaid care work? Solidarity economy would absolutely recognize it as part of it is part of the solidarity economy. It's an important economic activity that needs to, without which, right, our society just wouldn't even exist. And almost all of us have engaged in something, right? Taking care of our parents or our kids or our siblings or our neighbors. So it's almost, you know, that's a way of participating in the solidarity economy. So I'll stop there. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that that's what's so intriguing about it, is that I think it is unknown as a framework, but people are engaging in it. And yeah, so.
You know what? I forgot an important thing. I forgot to say that all, like, connecting up all these practices that align with the values is all about articulating and building and prefiguring a post-capitalist future. So solidarity economy is very much clear that we're not going to get to that more just and equitable and sustainable and democratic world by reforming capitalism. So we're very clear about that. I know some people believe we can get there by reforming capitalism. That's a position. Solidarity economy takes a different, like, with all due respect, it's a different position.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for clarifying the philosophy of that organization. So I'm going to turn it over to Adoma. So I mentioned that she's recently completed this national survey for the center about alternative economy perceptions and behaviors. So this is kind of the first time we've talked about this publicly, and so it's really exciting. It literally just came out a week ago. Malia's putting the report in the chat, but what were the main takeaways from that, Adoma?
Oh my goodness, this is so exciting. I kind of want to connect it to what was mentioned earlier, sort of building off of Kelly, what you were mentioning about this like widespread frustration we were seeing in discussions of how do we address this? How do we think about this system that we kind of keep coming up against in our environmental work, in our social equity work, and all these different sectors of our work? We keep coming against this like larger system that we don't really have the words to grasp. So with this growing frustration, it really encouraged us to do a little bit of digging and sort of get our feet wet to understand a little bit of the lay of the land, understand how people are talking about it, how people consider these different aspects of alternative economy practices. So to gain that understanding, we conducted an online survey of the US public, sort of to gain that get a sense of the existing knowledge of alternative economy practices, the perceptions of the role of corporations and the role that corporations play in the economy, as well as people's willingness to engage in different community level alternative economy actions, like, for example, community supported agriculture or land trusts, as Emily was mentioning before. So to give you a little bit of a rundown of what we were seeing in the report, the survey found that 3/4 of Americans agree that our economic system needs change, but only about 1/3 are comfortable using alternative economy terms in conversation. And we tested a variety of terms, including post-capitalism, as Emily just mentioned, but also other terms, including degrowth economy, democratic socialism, just transition, and a new economy. So a lot of people were familiar with the terms, but they weren't quite comfortable using them, suggesting that there might need to be a little bit more educational outreach and additional support in how we frame our discussion. We did find that more than 90% of respondents were familiar with the solidarity economy or alternative economy practices, such as the community land trusts, the community-supported agriculture and gardens, the cooperatives, credit unions, DIY, and all these different aspects of alternative economy work that people are already engaged in. More than 63% of respondents also indicated that they support these alternative economy practices. However, only about 30% said that they currently participate or have participated in the past in some of these practices. However, more than about 60% of respondents said that they support, were willing to engage in, sorry, excuse me, let me restart that. More than 60% of respondents indicated that they support or are willing to engage in activities that represent alternative economy on a larger scale, including participatory budgeting, community sharing, and cooperative ownership. However, 51% indicated that they lacked financial resources, or 49% indicated that they lacked time as major barriers to engaging in these activities. If you are interested in learning more, I strongly recommend checking out the report that we put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into, that Malia just heard in the chat. I think it does a good job of laying out a lot of what we were seeing, as well as explaining a lot of our understanding of alternative economies and the lay of the land that we engaged with. Yeah.
Thanks, Adoma. Yeah, I think it was enlightening in that there is still just uncertainty about how to talk about this and how to frame it. And I think the positive part was that people were engaging, but just didn't know that was what it was. And we're trying to take that and figure out what that looks like for our work going forward. You know, where would the Center for Biological Diversity fit in this work? You know, like a land trust and community supported agriculture and things that are more environmentally specific maybe makes sense for us, you know, a compost cooperative and that kind of thing. So yeah, more to come from the center on that, but that was the start of our portfolio in this area, and I really want to thank Adoma for not just all the work, but her thought leadership in it, honestly. Over to you, Alison. So the film focused on co-ops as this alternative economy example, but you work at a mutual aid abortion fund, and mutual aid is another one of these examples of an alternative economy framework. So tell us what your organization does and how it works.
Yeah, so Midwest Access Coalition is an abortion fund, but unlike traditional abortion funds, we don't pay for the procedure itself. We pay for and book all of the practical burdens or hurdles clients have to overcome to even get to their appointment. Now we're living in a post-Dobbs world where 15 states have banned abortion, but accessing care was already an average of 100 miles away for most Americans before Roe v. Wade was overturned. So we pay for and book transportation, accommodations. We give money for childcare and food, medicine, any kind of other incidental that might make the client not reach their procedure. We cover the entire Midwest, and so anyone living in the Midwest, we'll support no matter where they need to go for their care. Third trimester care is our care later in pregnancy is only done in 3 states right now, which are Maryland, DC, Colorado, and New Mexico. So anyone generally past 26 or 28 weeks will have to travel no matter where. And because we're living in a post-Roe society now, we're also supporting anyone who needs to travel to the Midwest for care. So if you would have asked me 3 years ago how many people from Texas we supported, it would have been 8 in 2021. And this year it's been over 400, totaling a third of all of the clients that we've seen. And so I'm just happy to be here and to talk about mutual aid. I think it's been going on for a long time, and that abortion funds have really led the way in this kind of solidarity economy. But we see this all the time outside of abortion care too, right? You see GoFundMe's for people's hospital bills or for people's funeral costs. If someone's lost their home, there's just so much to say why mutual aid is so important and so necessary in our community, especially for people who do have health insurance, do have life insurance, do have all of their T's crossed and their I's dotted, and they're still coming, with these $1,000 deductibles that working class folks can't meet. So there's got to be a better way out there, and we hope taking care of each other can show that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it really does highlight the problems within our systems still, right? And if anybody follows the work that the center does in the team that we work in, we talk about the reproductive health side of things and the consumption side of things. And it is just unfortunate that these systems, patriarchy, capitalism, and whatnot, are holding folks back to getting the care that they need. And patient-centered care based on the zip code that you're in and the demographics that you may hold. So thank you for your work. All right, we're coming to our one of our last rounds of questions here. I just want to remind folks, thank you. There's a few questions already in the chat, so feel free to put your questions for the panelists in the chat, and we're going to get to them shortly. But over back to you, Emily. So I found this. I'm not sure I should have mentioned this to you. I found out that National Co-op Month is in October. So unbeknownst to me, we were showing a co-op movie in the month of October. And so the film focused on co-ops in Canada, but your organization is in Massachusetts and operates as like a co-op incubator. So tell us about, because people may say that was Canada, it can't be done here or whatever. Tell us about some of the co-ops that you've started here in the US.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for that question. So my day job is I'm the co-director of Wellspring Cooperative. We're based in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is one of those typically the industrialized towns. It's a majority people of color, mostly Black and brown communities. And jobs really has been a long-term problem in this greater Springfield area. Holyoke, the next door city, is also likewise really struggling. So Wellspring from the get-go wanted to locate and work in Springfield in what we call the lower valley, because in the upper valley in Western Massachusetts, which is where the 5 colleges are, I won't name them. And anyway, 5 colleges in the upper valley, it's a different environment. It's a different culture, very progressive. There's like 25 worker co-ops in the upper valley in a relatively rural area. So I am pretty sure if we did the math, it would be one of the most dense worker co-op areas in the country. But there were virtually none in the lower valley, which is like where urban centers, the communities of color, the immigrant communities. So that's where we work. We have 10 co-ops in our network. Now we've been around for 10 years. We have an upholstery co-op that mostly works for anchor institutions like colleges and hospitals. We have a 1/4 acre hydroponic greenhouse we sell to the big supermarkets and the co-op stores, as well as the institutions. We have a weatherization insulation co-op. They're based in Holyoke. We have a biodiesel co-op. They take waste vegetable oil and they turn it into fuel. We have a cleaning co-op that uses environmentally friendly chemicals, cleaning products. We have a mental health co-op. We have an outdoor wellness co-op. We have a couple others that I'm forgetting, but that gives you a sense. And that's just us, right? If you look at worker co-ops in the United States, they're clearly on an upward trend. They're booming, and they are especially growing in distressed communities. And this tends to be true that cooperatives see an uptick when times are hard and people come together to create their own livelihoods, their own business opportunities. So we're seeing that all throughout the country. And some of the fastest growing co-ops are immigrant co-ops, because as owners, they don't face the same kind of crackdown in terms of being undocumented. So a lot of those co-ops are in the cleaning sector, and they've been really, really, really successful.
It's so exciting to hear all those examples, because frankly, we could be doing that in every sector. You know, that is what's so amazing about it, is it can be used everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's just first of all, worker co-ops is a small sector. I think we're up to, in the entire country, over 400. But that's a drop in the bucket. It's really, really tiny. But you know, people go to business school and they never, ever, ever even hear, right? Like, how many people know what a worker co-op is, right? So that's part of it. I do recommend that if people want to see an example of a really successful cooperative ecosystem, check out Mondragon, MON, and then Dragon in the Basque region of Spain, because it's it's this joined up network of cooperatives in all these different sectors, and a lot of manufacturing. So it's a really good example of maybe where we could go, right? Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done still, but there's a lot of hope.
Awesome. Well, that's so inspiring. All right, Adoma, back to you. So the film provided examples related to food and housing, and you and I are both proponents of the social determinants of health. I like to plug this in whenever I can, which describes the non-medical factors that influence health outcomes, like food and housing, very similar to what Alison was mentioning about the support that she gives in her mutual aid work. So as a young professional on this panel, how would you summarize the feelings of young people in relation to our capitalist economy and maybe these social determinants of health, or just capitalism in general?
Yeah, I love this question. I think we are really at a very fascinating time in terms of people really realizing that things are not set out to provide support for them in times of stress. In the last 3 years, I know that not just in my friend group, but in a variety of online and in-person circles that I'm a part of, people have really been continuing to express this distrust and kind of rejection of our current economic system, and political system, of course. And I think a big part of that, you'll see online a lot of the reports talking about young people turning their backs on capitalism, this very sort of edgy approach to I guess what we're seeing. But fundamentally, I think it's a question of like this digital era and having access to information at the touch of a button, just the ubiquity of thought leadership that's really coming out right now, and really having the ability to see, in a lot of cases, that there are real problems, and a lot of the supposed solutions, these supposed work hard, get a good job, try and support yourself, that pathway is not realistic for a wide variety of people. I think that's kind of fostered a little bit of a disillusionment in my generation of people recognizing that there are inherent flaws in that vision, and really turning to each other, turning to mutual aid and alternate systems as a way to sort of provide support in a system where that was really fundamentally not meant to support us. And so, yeah, I think we're gonna, in the next 2 years, we're probably gonna have some pretty interesting discussions and thought pieces coming out from younger generations, people really expressing the need for change. Yeah, so exciting stuff,
Yeah, sometimes my heart just goes out for y'all, because I know it's, you think about climate, you think about it all, it's like, oh my God, yeah. So thank you for your optimism and and fighting the good fight so that you can survive. Okay, Alison, over to you. I think this will be our last formal question. So I'm so excited to have you on this panel, because we often talk about the economy separate from bodily autonomy. But as our report showed last year, our extractive economy harms reproductive health and makes care difficult. So how have you seen abortion restrictions impact a family's livelihood?
I think abortion restrictions, obviously impact a family's livelihood because abortion is an economic decision for a lot of people. It can be the decision to, pay the rent that month or have another child, or to have an abortion or to feed the 3 children that we already have. I'm even more concerned about it now in this post-Roe world where I think we're going to see families with generational trauma for being denied abortion care, like before 1973, because of just the devastating economic impacts abortion can have on a family, on a person to graduate from college or from high school even. And so I get really frustrated when I hear politicians or people say that abortion is a social issue, because it's not. It's a healthcare issue. It's an economic issue. Bodily autonomy is at the core of our being. And I think, there's a lot of reasons why bodily autonomy, whether it be abortion bans or the attacks on trans health care in recent years, are coming from certain people. And there are a lot of different reasons why. But I think, keeping us in our place, keeping us in a capitalist society where we're not supposed to thrive. just a few of us are, and if the rest of us are lucky to trickle up a ladder rung or two, then we should be grateful. And I just don't believe that's the world or the country that people want to live in, and that people can live in to thrive and have happy, healthy lives.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for that. It is all related. That is really where I see it. And it's so hard to work at these intersections, but it's important. So really, really grateful for you all. All right, we have some great questions, and I'm feeling good about getting through to these. So let me, where do I want to start? Does anybody want to define mutual aid for Julie? Off the bat here, I know Alison kind of talked about it in relationship to her work, but Emily, does the U.S. Solidarity Economy Network have a formal definition for it?
No, I think it's much like what Alison said. Absolutely, we see mutual aid as a really important cornerstone of the solidarity economy. Absolutely, it's an important piece, and it's how, it's how human beings have always survived, right? By helping each other out. This is just as natural as our species and many other species as well, right? Contrary to this idea that nature is red in tooth and claw. I mean, that is true, but there's also a lot of cooperation that goes on within species and actually across species as well. And so that's mutual aid, right? It's as old as life. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Adoma, we had a question.
And I would just add,
oh, please,
I would just add for mutual aid, it's the support outside of an unjust system. So mutual aid has always existed. We've always taken care of our communities, and mutual aid is not charity. It's just a recognition that there's a system of power or oppression over us, and that we feel moved to help solve or stand in solidarity with.
Thank you. I love that. There is that distinction for folks that it is not charity. And I do think that that can get confused sometimes. So thank you. Thank you for that. Adoma, I think this might be a quick question for you, but were B Corps with a social purpose included in your survey?
They were not. We really focused on asking the kinds of community level actions that people might have been involved in. So it was questions that really focused on like mutual aid, CSAs, very much on the community level, not so much on the like larger corporate level. Again, like going back to Emily's point, there are differences of opinion in the role that corporations, including B Corps, can play in the creation of a alternative economy. And we have to maintain that commitment to pluralism and recognizing that there might be different pathways to achieving an outcome.
Okay, thank you. I know I want to get to this one for you. It was either to Emily or Adoma, but maybe Emily, if you want to take this, because this came in the registrations too. Thoughts on the donut economics based on Kate Raworth's work. And so thoughts on that and its comparison maybe to the solidarity economy? Oh, Emily's freezing, but she's back.
Yeah, so I'm not hearing you very well.
Okay. Can you talk to us about the donut economics?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the question is, are you familiar with donut economics? Maybe how does it fit? The way the way I see it is, I'm not an expert on donut economics. What I've read, it's great. It's talking about not exceeding the carrying capacity of Mother Earth, of the environment, of nature. Totally embrace that, agree with that. It totally aligns with solidarity economy, principle of sustainability. I would say a distinction between donut economics and solidarity economy, it doesn't have an analysis of the economy, right? It doesn't have an analysis of capitalism. And for people working in the solidarity economy space, there are reasons that we think that capitalism is inherently, intrinsically, unavoidably unsustainable. So you could have these goals, right, of not exceeding the carrying capacity, but unless you, from a solidarity economy perspective and my own personal perspective, unless you start really grappling with the structural sort of and the laws of motion, the logic of capitalism, which is profit maximization, kind of blind growth, pursuing self-interest, we will never ever get to that kind of sustainability. It's baked into capitalism. So it's a difference between solidarity economy and economics.
Thank you for that. We get it a lot in the spaces that the center works in as donut economics as an alternative. So I like that distinction. I'm going to take one of the questions here about political power and big corporations and the House Joint Resolution We the People Amendment. And the center has engaged with this. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Adoma, wasn't Greg with the We the People Amendment, and he was one of our reviewers of the survey. So we did include some of these corporation questions based on that work. So, you know, while that's a very particular amendment about, you know, essentially, I think it was the Citizens United and considering corporations as people, you know, we definitely want corporate transparency. We want corporate oversight. We want corporate regulation. And so, yeah, I think we are involved in that movement and have been in correspondence with that group. So thank you for that question and bringing that.
Oh, sorry, I can build off a little bit from our survey there.
Okay.
Apology. I just,
Perfect.
you know, came into my brain. And so, yeah, so thank you so much for setting up that context, Kelly. We did coordinate with Greg Coolidge from the We the People Amendment. And as one of our reviewers, he suggested we focus a little bit more on the role of corporations, specifically in the political process. So we asked the question, just sort of considering people's perspectives on the role of corporations. And we found that over 80% of respondents agreed that corporations have too much power and influence in the political process. So we can see this as a really key indicator that people are sort of, you know, unhappy with the role that corporations play in this political process. And there is interest in resolutions like this, and there could be work going forward on sort of this area and regulating the power that corporations have on spheres of life that aren't strictly economic. Yeah, so that was just additional supplemental information there.
Good. I'm glad you chimed in, Adoma. You know the data better than me. All right, y'all. We're coming up on time here, so I want to be respectful, but let's do a lightning round. How could an individual make change to support this important issue when logging off? Let's leave people with an action, something they can do when they log off to support this issue. I'll start with you, Adoma.
Sure. I would love to say really try and get involved in your local community. There are probably more activities and more community level organizing than like meets the eye. Every so often, like I'll walk down the street and I see like a new poster up about people getting involved in like local garden share, or really just like keeping your eyes on the street and seeing like what is around. And of course, not every neighborhood will have these things, but I think there's an opportunity to start it, or just sort of like learn about what's in your local area. And that's a good way to start.
Awesome. Over to you, Emily. What can people do when logging off?
Well, absolutely. In addition to what Adoma said, you know, educate yourself, and wherever you are, like spread the word. If there isn't something going on that you can get involved with, I always also say for solidarity economy, a lot of it is about how we are as human beings, right? And not giving into this kind of capitalist emphasis on being competitive and success and beating someone else out in your own self-interest. So just simply being a little kinder, being a little bit more compassionate, being a little bit more heart. That is really part of building another world. It really is. So
A little more heart. Awesome. All right. Over to you, Allison.
Yeah, building off of what Adoma said, I think thinking about that first poll that you all took at the beginning of the webinar, if you're, banking at a credit union, think about shopping at a grocery co-op, or getting work at a co-op instead of a corporation, or donating to your local abortion fund that needs you now more than ever. I think, just adding one of those other solidarity economy examples to your everyday life is really helpful in the long run. And I know I'm going to start thinking about all of the different kinds of co-ops Emily talked about earlier as well. I live in a very small rural community where we don't even have a gas station, and so, let alone a grocery store. So thinking about where I live and what I could talk to my neighbors, I live on a farm, my neighbors about, and how we can build community for one another, and just maybe share tractors, or however I'm going to get that bale of hay out of my barn. So I loved all the examples Emily gave us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So one of the great things about this is that, we are really trying to bring the topics of health and environment. So if folks are on the call and they want to work at those crossroads, please reach out to me. I think Malia is going to put my email and the address. But yes, between economics, health, and environment, let's get something going here, folks. If you're not registered for the additional events in the series, Malia is also going to put that in the chat again. Next week's about industrial agriculture. We've got the film's director on with us, a public health professional, and a biological epidemiologist. It's going to be good. You're going to enjoy it. And then we've got a newsletter. If you want to hear about our future alternative economy work, such as a Library of Things fellowship that we're doing, and we're trying to build cooperative reuse washing facilities. So please sign up for that newsletter. Malia just put that in the chat. And I want to thank Malia and Fabiola for helping with tech, and our panelists, Adoma, Emily, and Alison. Your work is so wonderful and helpful, and I really hope folks watching got a lot out of this. So thank you all. Be on the lookout for a follow-up email from us. The recording of this with closed captions and transcriptions will be in there. The certificate for continuing ed credits, and ways to take action to support people and the planet. So if you didn't catch everything in the chat, I'm pretty sure it's going to be in your follow-up email, everybody. So when you close out the webinar, there's going to be an evaluation. So we would really love it if you were to take that for us. And thank you all so much for attending. And If we didn't get to your questions, email me and I will work with the panelists to get those answered.
Thank you so much. Great job.
Thank you all. Thanks, everyone. Take care.